Hello, good day. I believe we are live. Yes, we are. Greetings from New York to all of you, wherever you are in the world. I see we have around 240 attendees already, so we will go right in. I welcome you to this session, which is the second of this kind this year. So it's a pension town hall / pension briefing specifically for those who are in retirement. So I presume all of you here today are retirees or beneficiaries of the UN Pension Fund. Welcome back to those who have attended a similar session in the past. And welcome to those who joined for the first time, maybe because you're newly retired, and I hope all of you are well and that this session will be useful. We have, for those who attended in the past, you may notice that we have a slight change in format in how we conduct these sessions. Today, we will not have written Q&A in the sense that you can submit your questions and we respond in writing. Instead, we will moderate questions. So you can still submit questions in that Q&A box somewhere up there on the screen. But once you have submitted your questions, we will have my colleague, Dilba, who is also a pension expert, who will go through the questions and pick out those that are either most frequent or that she deems are most relevant or most helpful to address during a live moderation. So she will ask the questions and I will answer them. So there won't be written replies to your questions, but we will moderate questions and hopefully you will find this useful. And hopefully it will make it a bit easier to follow the session. We had feedback in the past through our surveys that quite a few members found, or attendees at previous town halls found, that it was very hard to monitor the Q&A and the incoming replies, all while listening to what was being said. So we are changing the format and hope that it is also more engaging. In all honesty, it's also more manageable for us in the fund because previously we had 8 people answering questions. We actually don't have the luxury of being able to provide 8 people during all the town halls that we provide, not just this one, but every month we have 1 or 2. And these are people who also answer queries from our members worldwide and process cases. So we had to make that adjustment also from that perspective. But hopefully it will work and you will get the information you need from this session. If not, please remember, you can always contact us, write to us, call us, so that we can help address questions that did not get addressed today, or maybe questions that came out of today's session where you would like to follow up. So we are obviously here for you, and please don't hesitate to contact us if you need more information. So for the chat, the Q&A, we will not open it right away, but only once we have reached not quite the end, but towards the end of the session, at which time it will be open for a short while. You can submit questions, and then Dilba will close the chat to review what has come in and moderate those questions. And if we have sufficient time, reopen it for a second round. That remains to be seen if we have the time. Finally, as always, please, when you do submit questions, don't provide personal details because we should keep those confidential. So please don't provide your unique ID number and don't ask questions that are very specific to your case. Those should really be submitted via our official contact channels so that we keep your confidentiality and don't share here information that shouldn't be, ideally shouldn't be shared. So the questions ideally should be of general nature so that they can be beneficial for everyone. With this, I will start just so you know that all of this material, this recording of this session today, and the PowerPoint I will share in just a moment, will be posted on our website. probably within a couple of days or so that you can access it at any time when you need it in the future. And finally, next week, we will hold the same session in French. So if you prefer to attend a version of this session in French, then next week might be better for you. It will be again on Wednesday and also from 9 till 11:30. All right, so I hope with that, the housekeeping part is done and we will go into the actual presentation. Let me share my screen. I hope it works. All right, you probably see the UNJSPF logo right now, and the presentation is coming up in just a moment. Here we go. All right, so before we go into the actual presentation, we will have a so-called little icebreaker, a question that we would be grateful if you were willing to answer it. And your answers might actually help us convey that advice onward to those who are retiring now or in the future. So the question is, what is one piece of advice you wish you had known before retiring from the UN system? What would have been helpful? And it can be any kind of advice. It does not need to pertain specifically to pension. But what is that one piece of advice that you wish you had known before retiring? I will hand over to my colleague Regina from our communications team so that she can share a Slido and you can hopefully access it in the Q&A by clicking on, I believe there will be a link. And the other option is to take a screenshot with your phone and provide some answers. So here are some answers coming in already. So some advice. Someone would have liked to know better how to proceed with getting benefits. Someone else says better understanding deduction on their pension. Read up, I presume that could be having read up more about maybe pension, I'm not sure. Having more knowledge. See that people are typing, so I will wait a bit. Oh, understand better what are the deductions on pension for early retirement. So the early retirement reduction factor. All right, yeah, that's very important, of course. What are the options other than benefits? So I presume that if it has to do with pension, that could relate to refer back to the option to actually wait before receiving a benefit up to 36 months, I presume. Better understanding pension referral or deferral. High cost maybe of benefit. How indexation works. Better onboarding for beneficiary survivors. Yes, we hear you. We're working on improving the overall, at least communication aspect and so on, but also the standard processing time for survivors benefits, which is now also, I think, for over 89% at 15 business days after we receive the required documents. Understanding deductions, the calculation formula, and tax. Yes. As you know, we can't give tax advice. We don't have that expertise, but definitely it is worth taking the time to explore that advice wherever you're going to reside. How the 1/3 withdrawal works, the calculation formula, more advice on the 2-track system. All right. There's a lot coming in. Thank you so much. And I see there's still a few of you typing. We will close this in just a moment. But we are going to take note of this advice and see how we can integrate that into the way we prepare our current participants, or help prepare and maybe focus our attention to those areas. Thank you very much for sharing that information. It is appreciated and noted. So we're taking note of this. Thank you so much. All right, so now I will reshare the presentation where I just stopped. Sorry, it takes always a little moment. Right, so what you're seeing now is the disclaimer. That's the page right after our icebreaker question. So that is just to say that in the end, of course, the regulations and rules of the fund will always prevail in case some of the information in here was not exactly accurately stated. I can assure you, however, that I believe all of it should be adequate and correct, since this is what we handle every day in the pension fund in our client services team. So before we start, just to reiterate that today's session is for those who are currently or soon to be retirees and beneficiaries entitled to a form of regular monthly payment from the fund, whether that is a disability benefit or a form of retirement benefit or survivor's benefits. So that is the purpose, and this is our focus here today. Generally speaking, I already mentioned that the recording and PowerPoint of today's session will be posted on our website at the link I'm showing you here. All recordings and presentations of all virtual global town halls that we offer are posted on our website, always, and always within 2 to 3 days from the date that the session took place. Thereafter, anyone can go and listen to the recording in their own time and at the speed that suits them, and of course also access the document that was shared. So same for today's session. If you are here new to retirement and you just recently became a retiree, it might be useful that you take the time to also go over the pension e-learning module, which is called Essentials for Retirees and Beneficiaries. It is available on our website, and the link is provided here in this presentation. But if you go directly to our website, you would find it under the Resources tab. Oops, sorry very much. Also to highlight that today's session is not focused on the two-track. It does not include two-track information. I just want to be very clear. We have dedicated two-track sessions provided by our experts in the matter. And maybe some of you attended such a session provided by my colleague Philippe in the past. The recording of that session is available both in English and French on our website, and also the related document. And we will organize the next two-track session later this year in the last quarter of the year, when we will again provide an overview of the two-track system. So today is not the time to go into the depths of the two-track, which deserves more than just a few minutes. Those of you who know that it's a complex system, but if you are interested, it is definitely recommended that you start reading up on the two-track. There are resources on our website. We have a dedicated web page. We have an e-learning module also dedicated to the two-track, which is more interactive and allows you to kind of go through a learning process. And again, as I said, here linked also to the webpage where you can access the recording and document of the two-track session that took place last November in 2024. What was provided at the time is still valid. The two-track system doesn't change. It's part of our pension regulations and rules and adjustment system. So it is, excuse me, it is certainly absolutely current and up to date to listen to that recording if you are urgently in need of information, detailed information about the two-track. And on our website, we also, on the two-track website or webpage, we also have a video and a booklet that you can access that goes into even more detail than what the webpage provides. All right, so what are we then covering in today's session? First of all, I will give you an update on the status of the fund. If you attended the pension town hall provided by our SEPA, Rosemary McLean, and the RSG for investments at the time, Pedro Guaso, that was back in April, early April 2025. If you attended that session, you will have heard quite a bit of what I will cover here. But if you didn't, then hopefully this is going to be useful. Once we have covered the update, we will look at the website and member self-service, specifically as it pertains to retirees and beneficiaries, and I will highlight the parts that are especially useful in our view. We will then go over death-related matters and survivors' benefits. Then we talk about the regular or the annual proof of life requirement, which consists of providing the fund with the so-called certificate of entitlement, either in the paper-based form or in the digital certificate of entitlement or DCE app. So we will go over the requirement, that is what you have to do every year, what is required, how you can comply with that requirement, and also what you should do if your benefit was recently suspended because you did not provide the fund with adequate proof of life in the time frame that is allowed. So we will address that. Then we will have a look at how to change your address or your bank information, payment instructions like bank account and currency. And then we look quickly at the cost of living adjustment system for the pension fund and UN pensions. And finally, at the emergency fund. If we have time and it seems useful, I might go quickly over the website and member self-service just to show you where to find relevant pages and how to navigate our website to get to member self-service. But if we are tight in time, I might skip that because we would have covered it in the first chapter. And I think it's important that we have time to address your questions. And then finally, we will go over how to contact the fund so that you know how to reach us in case today's session triggered new questions or you find that it didn't answer the questions you had. So first of all, the fund. The fund today is strong, it is efficient, and it is connected. What does that mean? Our, and especially your benefits, you who are receiving benefits, are secure and they are backed by strong fund governance and administration. In terms of efficiency, we are surpassing the targets which are set, the KPIs and SLAs, all while modernizing our services to achieve always better service delivery and hopefully global excellence. We try to stay connected and do what we can to provide clear and timely communications on matters that pertain to pension via the different channels that we have at our disposal, whether that is the website, newsletters, social media, or direct communications with you as needed. We try to educate everyone, participants, but also you, retirees and beneficiaries, and hopefully continue to build trust so that you know that we take our mission seriously and we work hard to try to constantly improve our services. In a few numbers, we are currently serving over 240,000 members. That number was as end of December 2024. 24 member organizations with over 150,000 active participants and close to 90,000 retirees and beneficiaries. We often get the questions, especially from those who are on the two-track or considering the two-track, how many of our retirees and beneficiaries are actually receiving a benefit paid under the two-track? It's roughly 17% currently of our membership that are in receipt of regular monthly payments who are having their benefits calculated and paid under the so-called two-track system. So the vast majority of our members are not on the two-track, but on the US dollar track. In terms of funding, the current market value of assets of the fund as at 18 July was of over 101.5 billion US dollar, which is significantly higher than at the last session I provided to this group, meaning to retirees and beneficiaries, when it was at around $93 billion. So in spite of course, fluctuations, the fund is steadily moving towards higher asset levels. And again, this is the value at 18 July 2025. Finally, our funded ratio is at 111%, which means we are exceeding the 100%, which would indicate a strongly funded position. In terms of client base, just so you have a sense of how does it evolve over time, in case that is of interest to you, this is since 2000, the year 2000, so the last 25 nearly years. You can see that there has been a relatively steady upward trend in terms of numbers for participants and retirees, and that trend has continued until 2024. Although, of course, we know that in 2025 and 6, we expect that there will be a higher level of separations than what we have seen in the previous years due to the current funding landscape for the UN. In terms of where we pay benefits, it's truly worldwide, with a large number of our beneficiaries and retirees residing in the United States and in Europe, but also, of course, in Africa, in Australia and Southeast Asia and South America. So we are really truly distributed all over the world. Again, if you attended the session in the past, you already know this, but we see that our retiree and beneficiary population is constantly and continuously aging. And we have an increase in the group of those of our retirees and beneficiaries who are 90 years or older. That is 8-fold since the year 2000. So in just these numbers are from 2023 when the last assessment was done, but since 2023, we have an 8-fold increase in the number of those who exceed age 90. So we have over 4,000 beneficiaries over 90 years old of age. In terms of assets over time, that's also probably an interesting graph to see. You see that there has been a steady upward trend with some dips, absolutely. So there have been financial crises that have impacted our asset levels, but currently, the trend has been quite steadily upward since the year late 2022, early 2023, after a decline in the years following the COVID pandemic or during and immediately after the COVID pandemic. So currently, the trend is upward and the fund's investments and assets have been growing. In terms of financial position, these are the key messages that we as a fund would like to convey. This was also conveyed by our Chief Executive, Rosemary McLean, in recent pension town halls, that the fund is in a strong financial position, and most importantly, that your benefits are secure. There is no risk of your benefits being impacted in any way by potential market movements of the assets in the markets or the changing landscape, funding landscape in the UN. The fund is financially strong. We have regular actuarial valuation and asset liability management studies that are executed, and we will have an additional one. Normally, the ALM study is done once every 2 years, but there will be an exceptionally additional one at the request of the governing bodies. So there will actually be one to show or assess the fund's asset liability situation. It should also be noted that the participant numbers have an actual limited impact on the fund's solvency. We do get questions around if we see that a larger number than usual of participants has to separate in the near and medium future, will that not impact the health and financial stability of the fund? The situation is so that actually it will not have a tremendous impact because the solvency of the fund is not directly impacted in that we have our assets and a balance between the investment return side and the operating expenses and benefit expenses. And that is all determined based on these actual valuations and the asset liability management studies to ensure that even if there are movements that require us to pay out amounts that are higher than what has been the trend over the past years, the fund can absolutely absorb that. Also to note, the fund is constantly modernizing systems and tools to continue to deliver services, good services, and to continue to do so even if we are facing a situation where we have to handle, for example, increased separations. So through modernization, we are able to gain efficiencies in certain processes and absorb these increased needs for processing, and still be able to continue to deliver the services we need to deliver. And finally, again, the fund is committed to engage and communicate clearly with transparency and providing timely information through the channels we have to inform you of what is needed. The SEPA and the Office of Investment Management will endeavor to provide updates on the financial situation of the fund periodically so that you are being kept informed. For those of you who are interested in more details about the solvency, this is just the concept here of how basically what is the actual balance between assets and liabilities, and that we have this strong monitoring in place to ensure that the fund reacts appropriately if needed, if there is an imbalance that needs to be addressed. The most recent actual valuation that was done showed that the funding target for the fund was reached, and actually that the fund is in a very financially healthy situation. You can see here the trend again over time, and can see that the most recent study showed a surplus in terms of actuarial situation. If you're interested in more detailed information about the fund's solvency, it would be of interest to read what we have on our website under actuarial matters. It's linked here. You can link directly to this webpage, which explains in more detail than what I will cover here, how the fund's solvency functions and or is addressed or monitored, and also how the actual situation of the fund is assessed and monitored. And finally, again, if you weren't able to attend the town hall of the fund's chief executive and RSG at the time, I would invite you to watch this recording because there is much more detailed information than what I provide to you today on this topic. So overall, I'm here to convey the message that truly your benefits are secure. We are getting queries regularly from our members asking about this and worried that they may not be secure and what they should be doing, also in view of the current dollar situation. And in response to the dollar questions, I can also just convey what our data analysts and experts in the matter in the fund have explained to us in the fund, which is that the dollar has over time had a steady trend to be around the value that not it is today, but overall the situation is not alarming because this is not a first in the fund's existence that there has been a fluctuation in the dollar value, and that overall there is no reason to be alarmed and to make major changes to how you receive your benefits unless you absolutely want to, of course. So again, if you are interested in more information on these topics, excuse me, please monitor our website where we are also communicating on topics of concern to our members so that you get the information you need or the updates you need from the experts in the fund that are best placed to provide them. Now, in terms of strategy, the fund strategy is as outlined here. Clients are very much at the center of our focus, and a lot of the work and projects that are going on in the fund are about improving your experience as clients, simplifying your experience, and making it so that ideally you don't even have to worry about reaching out to us, but have the information you need when you need it, either at your fingertips or are provided with it proactively by the fund. So we are striving to reach that as a status through modernization and implementing new systems that allow us to interact with you in a manner that is more efficient and improving. Now, what have we done to actually concretely improve your experience? We have improved our response time to client queries. So in 2024, we were able to resolve the vast majority of queries within 4.4 business days. That's, of course, an average. And for more complex cases and queries, this might have taken longer. And here we are talking about addressing queries, not necessarily processing workflows like a reinstatement workflow or such, which takes longer simply because it's not just about responding to a question, but to actually take action in our systems and setting up certain features so that we address your concern as adequate. In terms of also servicing, the fund's contact center works 24 hours, 5 days a week from Monday through Friday. Current wait time for calls is less than 15 seconds. If you call during these days, usually you don't have to wait more than 15 seconds before your call is responded to, which of course is something we're very proud of because it's, I think, quite exceptional in the UN system. So we are constantly monitoring this service delivery for our contact center also to ensure that ideally we further improve, but we keep that as a target, hoping that we are not getting, of course, into a situation where we have a stark increase in calls where response times may be a bit longer than 15 seconds. Overall, clients are satisfied with the way we communicate on our website, and most importantly for you, I think, the monthly payroll has continued to be issued on time for everyone. Yes, there are sometimes issues with payments, but usually they have to do either with a change in payment or banking information that wasn't communicated to the fund, or maybe with a change in information pertaining to a correspondent bank that the fund wasn't aware of, or with issues that are to do with a situation in a country where it might be difficult to make payments. But the regular monthly payroll for the vast majority of our members is executed without any problems, and everyone receives their payments on a regular basis at the end of the month as expected. For the COLA, the cost of living adjustment for 2025, you know this, I'm sure, but there has been a 2.8% increase since the 1st of April for the US dollar track. And of course, if you are paid under the 2 track, you would have probably also seen adjustments for most countries or for many countries at the same time, 1st of April 2025. We are paying in 19 currencies currently, so it's increased over time. A couple of years back, we were at 17 currencies, so we are improving also the service in terms of in which currencies we pay benefits. And in order to ensure that key information reaches everyone that may need it and who has access to online services, we have paid a lot of effort to carry out these global virtual town halls like this one today, which started in 2024. And we were able to hold over 30 of these town halls, and it reached over 25,000 members of the fund attending these different town hall sessions. So we're trying our best to get information out to everyone, at least on the key topics. Currently, we are very focused on working on a new system, Connect, which is a customer relation management system. We launched it internally in the fund in 2024, which has already helped us address queries slightly faster because it's a more modern and intuitive system than what we had before. And we, in 2025, so far handled over 71,000 queries in that new system. And we are currently working on the next phase of this Connect implementation, which is focused on improved member self-service, where we will go live with a new version of member self-service hosted on the new portal that is the same as Connect, basically, probably at the very end of this year or very early next year. So you will have hopefully a better client experience and a better user experience when using member self-service. We will have new features, and we hope that it will also be more user-friendly. We are offering now a new feature in member self-service that is especially important for you, or those of you who need to declare your income for tax purposes and who may need a so-called statement of benefits from the UN Pension Fund. So since roughly, I think about a month ago, a little more, we have now a self-service feature in member self-service where you can actually subscribe to receive the annual statement of benefit. You can decide for what tax period and in which language you wish to receive the statement. And you can also, once you have subscribed, generate statements for the past, up to past 7 years, directly in member self-service by simply generating and accessing the statements inside member self-service. So this is a new feature that hopefully will make it easier for you to obtain the statement of benefit when you need it, including for past periods. We also implemented AI-generated translations of the content of our website in the 6 official languages of the UN. What does that mean? It means that if you go on our website and select one of the 6 languages, you would see the content that you're looking at change from the language, either English or French, to the other languages, one of those that you have chosen. It should be noted that this automated translation works only for the content on the web pages. It doesn't work for the resource material like booklets or videos, which will remain in the language in which they have been produced. But you would get a lot of information automatically translated into the additional 4 languages that weren't available before. In terms of correctness of the translation, it is AI generated. We have trained the system as much as possible to correctly translate pension language into the other languages. But of course, it's an immediate translation. It's not something that is checked or verified by anyone. So it could be that there's information that is not well translated, in which case, hopefully you would notice it and come to us to ask for clarification. The reference languages of the website will always be English and French, which is the languages in which we create content. So that's going to be always a reference. But we have tested, of course, this AI-generated translation, and it works very well for these languages and should normally help you access information in those languages if that is a preference for you rather than English or French. We have also modernized our Contact Us webpage so that it's easier to find the information you may need to reach us. I will show that to you a little bit later so that you can see what it looks like now, but hopefully it makes getting in touch with us a little bit easier. And then finally, you know, of course, I presume about the digital certificate of entitlement app, which continues to be adopted by more and more of our retirees and beneficiaries. So far in 2025, already over 40,000 beneficiaries have used the app to issue their digital certificate of entitlement. This is out of around 72,000 retirees and beneficiaries who have to provide their proof of life this year. So well over 50% of our members are using the app, and constant improvements are being made to the DCE app to make it more and more user-friendly and more, technically solid. So reminder to everyone, if you're a user of the app, make sure you update the app as any other app on your phone regularly so that it benefits from the updates that improve the experience inside the app. What is coming up for us is something called multi-factor authentication for member self-service access. I'm mentioning that here because it will impact you if you're using the member self-service portal in the future after multi-factor authentication is going live. We refer to multi-factor authentication as MFA, and it means that in order to access your member self-service portal, you will have to first set up multi-factor authentication by providing an email at which you can receive a authentication, step or communication, which once you have clicked on something in that document that you would receive to that email, you are then cleared for use of member self-service. Multi-factor authentication is in place, I would say, probably by all banks. Definitely anywhere where the portal that you're accessing contains confidential information nowadays uses multi-factor authentication to make your member self-service more secure. So the fund is moving towards that. We are close to implementing multi-factor authentication, probably within the next 3 months. And once that is the case, we will communicate about it, of course, but we will also require everyone to re-register for access to member self-service. So in other words, before, even if you're currently a member of member self-service and you are already registered, before you can access it again in the future, when we launch MFA, you will have to, and you will be prompted to, provide again your name, your unique ID number for the fund, and your date of birth, as well as an email address to be able to set up this multi-factor authentication and then access your member self-service. This is to protect your data and the data in member self-service for you so that it is secured or more secure, and we can offer also more services in a more secure environment. And then, as I already mentioned, we're working on an enhanced member self-service portal. And internally, we are working on a new so-called financial suite. The new financial suite is basically a new financial solution that is cloud-based and which should make for a stronger platform inside the fund to manage financial processes, but also to allow for an improved user experience. So you would hopefully benefit from that on the side of member self-service through enhanced services because of a more modern financial suite. That is going to be something we're going to work on in 2025 and probably all of 2026. Oops, I'm so sorry. I don't know how that happened. Right. So that is it for covering what has happened in the fund over the last, I would say, few months. And what we are working on, of course, we're working on a plethora of other projects, but these are the ones that are probably the most relevant in terms of how they will impact your experience and your interactions with the fund. Now we are moving to the first part about website and member self-services that are relevant for you as retirees and beneficiaries of the UN Pension Fund. First of all, I would like to just highlight that it is a very good practice to regularly check the UN Pension Fund website and see what are the latest news articles that have been posted, because we usually communicate in that way on our website via a news article to announce anything that is relevant to our members. So, for example, recently we had an article about sending out the 2025 Certificate of Entitlement to all those who had not yet provided a digital Certificate of Entitlement inside the DCE app. Or we had an article about the suspension of benefits for those who didn't provide their annual proof of life in a timely manner, and what to do and how to do it so that we can reinstate your benefit as soon as possible, how to contact us and what steps to take. There was also an article about the new feature to subscribe to and generate the statement of benefits, etc. So by checking our website, I don't know, maybe once a week, you would, I think, probably find a new article at least once a week, if not more often. These articles are also then shared with you in the form of newsletters that we send out usually once a month, where we highlight the most important changes or modernizations or events that happened and that might be relevant to you. Overall, I would say make use of the website, the information part, but obviously also use it to find information about topics that are relevant to you as a retiree or beneficiary. And of course, use it to contact us. The Contact Us page provides the official and correct channels to get in touch with the fund in a manner that will ensure that we get your query, that it is tracked, that it is assigned to the appropriate team of pension experts, and therefore handled in the best time frame, and you receive a timely response. The other advice is please sign up for member self-service if you haven't done so yet. It's a very useful space, and I hope going through what you can do in member self-service a bit later in this presentation will encourage those of you who are not yet using member self-service to sign up. And if you have already signed up, make sure that your email address is up to date and that you have easy access to member self-service. Also, a heads up, as I mentioned, in the future, probably within a few months, you will see that we will move to multi-factor authentication, as I explained. And at that stage, when you have to sign up again for multi-factor authentication or set it up, excuse me, you will have to provide your unique ID number. I would suggest note down your unique ID number somewhere, and if you don't have it close to you already, then go into your member self-service, take it from an official document or wherever you can find it in there. I apologize. Note it down somewhere safe so that you have it when in the future you may have to re-sign up for self-service because of multi-factor authentication. It will make the process that much easier. So the website is UNJSPF.org. I'm sure you're familiar with that. Let us take a quick tour of what is most relevant for you as retirees on the website. Right, so let me go to the web page, to the home page. So here on the homepage, excuse me, and by the way, if you're on another web page and you need to come back to the homepage, it's always easiest to just click here on the UNJSPF logo. It will take you back to the homepage. I just did that. Now, in terms of language, as I just mentioned, you can now navigate the website in its the 6 official languages of the UN. So here, up here, where you see English, you also have the other language options. I will demonstrate that in a moment. Also, if you find that the size of the text on the web page is not good for you and you would like it larger, you can just click here on large or even extra large to make it easier to read. So it will always be in a larger format for you. I will keep it at normal for now. So first of all, you have here, of course, our rotating information carousel. Underneath, easy access if you're retired or receiving benefits. Here, if you click here, you will get directly to the web pages that are the key topics for retirees and beneficiaries. Key figures, if you're interested. Underneath, news and announcements. So the 3 most recent articles are published here. And you see here is the new feature, member self-service for statement of benefits, for example. And if you want to see more, you click on more news and you will see all the articles that have been published in chronological order, starting from the most recent one. So here you can see that there was an article on the new statement of benefit feature on the 10th of July, the mailing of the 25 certificate of entitlement on the 1st of July, what to do if you did not receive your June 2025 benefit on the 30th of June, etc. So these articles are useful because they contain information that is very specific to this topic. For example, I'm looking here at the article, what to do if you did not receive your June 25 benefit because we didn't receive your certificate of entitlement. It explains to you what to do and how to submit your documents to the fund. So if you're in that situation, it certainly helps reading through this article to know what to do, etc. So I'm going back to the main page, to the home page, to continue showing you what is useful here. So under for clients, you can either go to the chapter of most interest, retired or receiving benefits, or you can say, I want to see all the topics. If I go to retired or receiving benefits, you see here the topics that we deem are of usefulness to you include authentication of signatures, when is that required and how does it work, the certificate of entitlement exercise, how does cost of living work or cost of living adjustments, what to do if someone needs to notify the fund of a death, the digital certificate of entitlement, the emergency fund, what could be reasons for fluctuations in monthly benefit amounts, information about legal guardianship, also very useful, what to do in case of non-receipt of monthly payments, that could be because of the non-receipt by the fund of the certificate of entitlement, but it could also be for different reasons. How does it work for re-employment after retirement? Information about the statement of benefits. Survivor's benefits, an important page. The 2-track system. And what to do if you need to update your marital status or personal information, and how to update payment instructions. So you see, these are the key pages that we consider are especially important for you, retirees and beneficiaries. So I will go to the statement of benefit right now, just to show you the information in case you needed to generate a statement of benefit in the future, or you have never received a statement of benefit and you want to subscribe to receive it in the future. It explains what the statement of benefit is, which is basically a document providing you the amount that was paid to you by the fund for a given 12-month period. And that could be for tax purposes. Most people use this statement for tax purposes. And then it tells you how can you request the statement. So if you click here, it will give you the details step by step. What are the subscription options? So you can select the payment period for which you want to subscribe, etc., and so on. So you have FAQs here, and you have to the right a step-by-step guide, which I'm opening right now. And this step-by-step guide takes you step by step through how to subscribe and then generate statements of benefits in member self-service where you don't need interaction with the fund. So if you look, this is a view of member self-service for retirees. You see that under documents, we now have subtab view existing documents, and we have a subtab ad hoc document request. If you want to subscribe to receive the statement of benefit because you are not yet in receipt, or if you want to generate a statement for the past, you can generate statements for the past 7 years, you click on ad hoc document request. And that will take you to this page where you have to select in the selected document field here, statement of benefit letter. Then you click on proceed and it will take you to new subscription. You click on new subscription and then it will take you to the next page where you have to select what period would you like the statement for. So what do you want in terms of amount shown in the statement? What period should that amount cover? It's always a 12-month period. And you have a drop-down menu where you can choose the period that applies to you. Most people, again, use the statement for tax purposes, so you can choose the tax period that applies to your case. And then you can choose whether you want this specific statement either in English or in French. The language choice here only applies to the statement. It's not for member self-service in general, only for the statement. And if in the future you go back in and you want to go back to a different language, French or English, the other one, then you have to update that under this page here. And then once you have saved those preferences, you will have subscribed. If in the future you want to change the period, the tax period or the language, you go and click on edit. So you go back in, follow the steps necessary and then click on edit, and you can make changes as needed. And then this is for subscription for a new statement of benefit. So if you're submitting that request ahead of the next statement being generated, so let's say you submit this in December 2025 to get a statement in the next pension statement that's generated, let's say, end of January 2026 for the period of 12 months in 25, then you're just subscribing, and once the statements are generated by the fund, it will be posted inside your member self-service, and it will also be mailed to you by the fund at that time. However, if you wanted to now, after you have subscribed, if you wanted to also generate a statement for a past period, you go again into ad hoc document request. And then under this page here, you can see now document generation. You see there is a new kind of section that has opened up after you subscribed. And that section allows you to select the year or years for which you would like to generate past statements. Again, you can only generate a statement for the past for up to 7 years prior to when you are generating or when you are going in here to generate statements. So there's a limit of 7 years prior. So you could generate the years 2024, 2023, 22, etc., up to a maximum of 7 years into the past. Once you have clicked here on Generate Document, the document will be generated and will show thereafter under View Existing Documents, just above. I don't know if you can see my little arrow here. So under the Document tab on the left-hand side, there is the subtitle View Existing Documents. So once you have generated the statement you want to generate, it will be posted under view existing documents. And that's how it works. And then if you go to view existing documents, you will see your statement show there as a PDF, and you can open it from here, download it if needed. One comment, the statement that is posted in Member Self-Service is exactly the same as the one prepared by the fund and mailed out every year. In other words, the document, the statement of benefit mailed out by the fund does not include a signature and it does not include a stamp. It is exactly the same format as what is posted in Member Self-Service. So truly, by accessing the document and printing it in Member Self-Service, you have the same document as if you wait for it to come to you by mail. Last comment. Statements that you generate for past periods will never be mailed to you. They will only be available under View Existing Documents. Only future statements generated by the fund after you have subscribed, excuse me, will be visible in Member Self-Service under View Documents and will also be mailed to you to your official mailing address. But again, the way they look is exactly the same in Member Self-Service and the document printed out by the fund and sent to you your mailing address. So that's it for the statement of benefit that I wanted to highlight because it's a new feature and I hope it helps you to know where to find information about this feature on the website. So again, it's under either retired or receiving documents or under all topics. So you just have to find the vignette that says statement of benefits, click on that, and it takes you to the page that has all the information and resources for statement of benefit. Okay, so in terms of what is useful here, otherwise, if you're interested in the investments of the fund under historical fund performance, you would get access to that information. This is maintained by our Office of Investment Management. And they have recently updated this historical fund performance page to make it a little bit more user-friendly. But it's a very heavy page in terms of the content. So as you can see, it takes time to open that page. I'm not going to wait right now. I'll show it to you once it opens. In the meantime, under resources, the important tabs, I would say, that are worth exploring are Member Self-Service with all the information about Member Self-Service that you may need. Oh, well, now it just opened. So this is, I go there, I will return to that just after. So under resources, you have this webpage on Member Self-Service with information on how to register for it, how to sign up, and in the future, we will post here information about multi-factor authentication. You also have the contact email for the Member Self-Service support team. If you have any problem with Member Self-Service, you can reach out to them directly via this email address provided on this webpage. Or you can, of course, use the official contact form to contact us with any issue you have. And then under resources also, you have this page with the pension e-learning modules that I mentioned earlier and the pension town hall sessions. Here is where you can access past events, including, for example, the session on the two-track. There was the session on the two-track on 14 November. I'm highlighting it here. And you see that here you can click for the recording. So you can access the recording if you wish, either in English or in French. And of course, you also have numerous other sessions for various topics that might be of interest. Still under resources, you have all the videos for all the topics where we have videos. These videos are usually 2 minutes long. Booklets, you have the page on exchange rates, CPI adjustment, etc. I'll show you that page in just a moment. And you have a link to FAFIX, the Federation of Associations for International Civil Servants. Also a very useful page. This takes you to the actual FAFIX page meaning, oh, I don't know what happened here. Oh, sorry. The page where FAFIX provides information about what this federation is, but also the link to all the member associations worldwide that are associations of former international civil servants. So if you go to member association list, you will be taken to the page where all member organizations worldwide, member associations worldwide are listed. And by clicking on View More, you will find the contact details for the associations in the country that you are interested in. They don't exist in every country, but in many. And for the fund, all the AFIX offices and FAFIX are a very, very important partner in servicing our retirees and beneficiaries. Some of you may be very familiar with these associations, but if you are not, I would strongly encourage you to check whether in your country of residence there is an AFIX office and consider whether you would like to join, because they are really incredible support and resources for retirees in the given country, and often have access to resources that the fund doesn't have. They often have more information about what is locally relevant, like taxation, than, for example, the pension fund has. So that page you can access via our website under Resources FAFIX. And close this. The exchange rate page, also under Resources. Here you can check what is the situation for a given country that you might be interested in. I'm just going to take any. I'm just going to say, I don't know, let's take Austria. And if you're interested, you can see here the history over time of exchange rates that applied between the dollar and the currency in the given country, consumer price index movements that impact for the two-track, the cost of living adjustments, etc. So if you're interested in that information, it's available here under Resources, Exchange Rates, etc. So again, because there's so much data, it takes time to populate all these fields. So you see, it says here the country, the currency, and how many records are showing. If you want to see more records, you can increase the number from 13 to whatever you like, up to view all. But the more records, the longer the charging of the page may take. And then here in this example, like Austria, you can see you have the exchange rates, the mid-months, beginning of the month, the 36 months average, and the quarterly rates. And you have the CPI adjustment, which stands for Consumer Price Index, again, which determines whether cost of living adjustments are being applied and at what rate. So you can see that in 2025, Austria had an adjustment for those paid on the local track for Austria of 2%, compared to 2.8% for the US dollar. Okay. I'm now going back to investments, historical fund performance. Just in case you're interested, here you have that page where, sorry, the investments team posts regularly updates on the current value of assets of the fund. As I told you, it's 101.5 billion as at 18 July. And if you go way down, okay, it wasn't able to load the full page, but normally it does. You can see more information that pertains to the investments of the fund and the assets of the fund. So another very useful page. I'm really sorry that I have this cough. Maybe it helps if I drink. Sorry for that. All right. And then website, another important page, I would say, for those of you who are interested in solvency questions, you could visit this Actuarial Matters page under About Us, where you will find information about solvency, asset liability, and funding. This is a good page that provides more technical information, but I think very useful one. And then Contact Us, obviously a very important page, because this is a page that you would use when you need to get in touch with the fund. If you click on online, it will allow you to submit an email to us by completing this, excuse me, contact form. And you would have to identify yourself as a retiree or beneficiary. And then you would tell us what exactly you would like help with. For example, you want to receive a certificate, or you would like to get an estimate, or you would like to get information or submit an emergency fund request. So you select what is applicable to your case, and then the specific subservice. Ideally, you provide your unique ID number, obviously your name, your email, and your phone number. And then as a retiree, you also have to provide your country of residence, and you can write us, please, a text to explain a bit more detail what exactly you would like us to do for you. You say, I'm not a robot, and then you submit your request. That's how it works for written queries. We review all written queries in depth, and a pension expert specific for the topic for which you write to us will review your request. There's also information on this page about urgent assistance, meaning priority assistance from the fund for non-receipt of monthly payments, or in the case of death and when we are informed of the death of a pension fund member. So here on this page, you have information on what to do and how to contact us if you need to report that you didn't receive your regular monthly payments, or if you needed to contact us or someone needed to contact us to report the death of a pension fund member. And then if someone wants to contact us by phone, we have on this page the contact center hours, the primary call numbers, which is one in New York and one in Geneva, but also over 60 toll-free local numbers in a large number of countries worldwide. So ideally, if you want to call us, obviously we suggest you use the toll-free numbers so that you do not have to pay for the call. If you can visit us in person, that's wonderful. I know that's limited to just a few duty stations, but always make sure you check our webpage before coming to make sure that the hours haven't changed and that we are still open on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. in New York, or on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. in Geneva. So it's good practice to always do a quick check on this Contact Us webpage about here, contact us in person, and then check whether the office you wish to visit has the same visiting hours that you're used to. We rarely change, but sometimes we have to. Either we have to close, maybe because we have a training that we cannot, that we need to do on a given day, or sometimes it has been for a snowstorm, or during COVID, of course, we were unfortunately closed for an extended period. But it's good to check just to make sure that you don't come and we're closed. And then finally, if you need to submit documents to the fund, here we explain how you can do that, either electronically via your member self-service, or by mail by using these addresses provided here, or of course by providing or dropping off documents in person. For electronic submission, please note that we only accept electronic submission via your member self-service portal using the document upload feature. And we only accept documents if they are official forms that were hand-signed and then scanned and uploaded in member self-service. So that is for electronic submission. If you cannot submit a document electronically, then of course you can mail it to us by snail mail or special courier, excuse me, or you can drop it off in person if you happen to reside in New York or Geneva, or Bangkok or Nairobi for that matter. Okay, and then final step is member self-service login. So to get to member self-service is here. You would click here and it would take you to the login page for member self-service. If you haven't yet registered for member self-service, you would have to first register, and you do that by clicking here on this register button. And then it will take you through the steps for registration. But if, of course, you have registered, then you know that you have to provide your username and the password that you set up during registration. Click on login and it will take you into your member self-service, where the first page is basically a disclaimer that you have to sign off on. And then once you have done that, you accept it, it takes you into your member self-service. Mine looks different than yours because I'm still a participant. So I have different features than you have as a retiree or beneficiary. But overall, member self-service functions in the same manner. You have these menu items here on the left, and you have on the top here, on the top right corner, an account button. And if you click on that button, it takes you to the page where you can update your email address as associated with member self-service. So earlier I said, make sure please that the email address you use in member self-service is the best one to reach you. And if you needed to update that, you just go here to account, click on update email address, and provide your new email address twice to update it. You can also here change your language preference. If you prefer to navigate member self-service in English rather than French, or French rather than English, you click here and it would explain to you how to do this, but it's very simple. You just select the language that you prefer and then save. I will remain in English today. So that's for the change of email address or language preference, but otherwise, the home page is where you will see all the main features. I will exit now because this is participant member self-service, so it's not very useful for you. Excuse me. And I will return to our presentation. This is the end of the tour of the website. I am so sorry for my throat. All right. So member self-service, you saw how to get there. Again, if you need help to set it up or whatever, please go to this webpage on member self-service, follow the instructions, and it should be quite straightforward to set it up. Now, what can you as a retiree or beneficiary do in the member self-service portal? This is highlight of what you can do. You can update your address and email, as I just showed you, and your address only if you're not paid under the 2-track system. In the future, in the new member self-service, that will be changed where everyone can then update their address. But for now, if you're on the 2-track, you cannot use the MSS feature to update your address. You will have to submit a form. But everyone who is not on the 2-track can update their mailing address in member self-service. You can also provide an emergency contact in member self-service. For now, it's an address only. In the future, in a few months, you will be able to also provide telephone number and email for your emergency contact. Second, you can track all payments from the fund. So under the disbursement tab, you can track every payment that the fund ever made to you. You would also see under the disbursement tab whether ASHI deductions were made. So if after-service health insurance deductions are done from your pension, you will see that and the amount in the disbursements tab. Then you can access all UNJSPF communications that are generated in the system, like the official benefit letter that you get at the time of benefit implementation, the cost of living adjustment letters. You can see the statement of benefit, as I just showed you, estimates that are generated under the 2-track estimate tool in member self-service, and you can access your annual CE form, provided you're not on the 2-track, and only if you haven't, by a certain time, generated your digital CE yet. I will talk about that more in a moment. You can access all official pension fund forms. That's the 4th tab here. Every single form is pre-completed with your name and your unique ID number and a barcode, which will make the scanning to your file secure rather than you sending a blank form from our website. Here we already have your name and your unique ID number pre-completed, and again, there is a barcode. So all official UN pension fund forms, including to change payment instructions or change address, or if you want to elect the two-track forms, etc., are available inside Member Self-Service, pre-completed with your specific credentials. This is under the eForms tab. Inside Member Self-Service, you can track receipt by the fund of the annual certificate of entitlement and or issuance of the digital certificate of entitlement. So if you used the DCE, the digital CE app, to issue your annual proof of life, then you can track that here under Proof Documents in Member Self-Service. Or if you send back a paper version of your CE form, you can track receipt of that paper form by the fund under this Proof Documents tab. Or if you used the MSS CE form and you completed that and signed that and then electronically uploaded it back to the fund via Member Self-Service, you can also see the receipt by the fund of that version of your form in Member Self-Service. So in other words, you can track the receipt by the fund of your proof of life document, whether that's the electronic CE form, the paper-based CE form, or the digital CE in the app. You can track that under Proof Documents in Member Self-Service. You can subscribe to receive and generate statements of benefits. So I already showed that to you in detail. That's under this Documents tab, Ad Hoc Document Request. You can generate two-track estimates under the Estimate tab. You can submit an emergency fund request under the Emergency Fund tab. You can electronically submit official forms and documents to the fund via the MSS Document Upload tab. And finally, as I showed you, you can change your language preference. So these are the key features of Member Self-Service that you could use if you found that to be useful to you. I think it's a very good tool, and again, encourage everyone who hasn't yet signed up for Member Self-Service to do so. This is a page, the support page on our website, if ever you needed support. And then again, in the top right corner, in the red box here, you see where you would have to click. Where you would have to click to trying to highlight. Yeah. So here you see it, the Member Self-Service login box. I'm going to not go into the details here, but you have in this presentation the same information that is provided on the Member Self-Service webpage on how to troubleshoot and get help if you needed it. Key features for Member Self-Service, I will not go into the details, but if you're interested, here they are highlighted page by page, should you find that useful. So I showed you already the account tab here on top, if you needed to change your email address or language preference, etc. And then thereafter, all the tabs explained here what their purpose is. And I already explained it to you in the previous page. And then page by page, how you can use each of these pages and what they look like. So this is really just to illustrate what I explained in case you wanted to go into more detail for each of these pages. All right. Now, just the last word on Member Self-Service. So as I mentioned, in the future, you have to expect that multi-factor authentication will become part of Member Self-Service. It is not yet. We expect that to be the case sometime in later this year for sure, maybe as soon as end of August, but it's possible that it might be a little bit later. So as I mentioned previously, it is to increase security and reduce risks associated with any online platform and to protect your data. And finally, advice, once again, make sure to note down your unique ID number somewhere so that you have it ready for when you need to re-register for member self-service when you set up your MFA in the future. This is not immediately, but when the time comes, it will be helpful to have your unique ID number somewhere handy so that you can go through the process quite quickly. Now I will highlight elements for death-related matters and survivors' benefits. So most importantly, I would say, make sure that you share with your family, or if you prefer not to do that, keep with your will or in a designated folder the contact details for the UN Pension Fund and key information about what your survivors should do in case of your passing. This will be tremendously helpful for your survivors so that they don't have to try to figure it out during a time when they will already be in a very difficult circumstance of loss and, of course, sadness. At least if they know where to turn, they or someone who helps them can easily contact the fund to inform us of the pension fund's members passing. The fund should be informed as soon as possible after a member of the fund passes away so that we prevent potential overpayments. We don't want overpayments because should you have an entitled surviving spouse that is, and we made 2, 3, 4 months of overpayments, they will first have to reimburse the overpayment to the fund before we can implement their survivor's entitlement. And it would delay the implementation of the survivor's benefit. So again, to make it as easy as possible for our survivors, it is helpful to put that key information somewhere where it's easy to access when the time comes. Useful information are videos on our website, but also booklets that provide key information, or you could print out a key page with the information on how to contact the fund from the Contact Us webpage that I showed you earlier, where I showed you urgent assistance, and it provides the contact details and what needs to be provided to inform the fund of the passing of a member. Personally, I have shared this information with my husband and my daughter, and I forwarded to them a selection of links that could be useful. And most importantly, I put indeed a printout of that page, as well as the survivor's booklet with my will, so that hopefully it's easy in case they needed to contact the fund and they would know what to do and what to expect. So I will not go through all the details here, but I want you to know that in this presentation, you have the information of what to do to inform the fund, or what needs to be done to inform the fund of the death of a pension fund member, where to write, how to contact us. There are different channels. Again, it can be online, it can be via the contact form, it can be via this specific mailbox, or it could be via phone, of course. But we will always need to receive certain key information and documents, like the name, the date of birth, the date of death, the unique ID number if possible, the mailing address, contact details for the surviving family or anyone who could be a contact for us, and an original or a certified copy of a death certificate. That document is key for us to move forward with the next steps to implement potential survivors' benefits. Without a death certificate, we cannot move because we need an official confirmation before we can determine that a death actually occurred. So this is just a summary of the key information, which is, by the way, provided also on our website. So what happens in the fund? Once we have been informed, we will determine entitlement to potential survivors' benefits. And if we have information that indicates there might be entitlement, we will reach out to the potential survivors to request additional information if needed. Like, for example, we may request copy of a marriage certificate, copy of the surviving spouse's birth certificate and or passport, We might have to request a divorce document if it's not on file. And we would request a form called PENS E2, which would provide payment instructions from the entitled survivor to the fund. That form PENS E2 should not be submitted to the fund in advance. There's no point because we do not honor forms that are more than a year old when we receive them. So while it is good to prepare all the other documents like marriage certificate copy, divorce document copy if applicable, there is absolutely no point in submitting to the fund a PENS E2 form while our pension fund member is still alive, our retiree is still alive, because we are not going, it's just going to confuse our system. It will create a death workflow when it shouldn't, and it's going to not serve any constructive purpose. I'm saying that because we are receiving advanced PENS E2 forms while our retirees are still alive, because they want to help their potentially surviving spouse so that they don't have to do that in the future. But that is not how it works. So just to clarify, the PENS E2 form is really just to be completed, dated and hand-signed, and the signature will have to be authenticated at the time that a survivor has been confirmed by the fund as entitled to a survivor's benefit, and we need to receive their payment instructions to then start paying survivor's benefits to that person or possibly several people. So I hope that clarified an aspect that we see that might not always be clear. So we get the question often, will my spouse be entitled to survivor's benefits after my death? The answer is if you were married at the time of separation from service and remained married to the same spouse until your death and are survived by that spouse, then yes, your surviving spouse should be entitled to a lifelong surviving spouse's benefit. And the entitlement would start from the date, the first day following first day of the month following the months during which the retiree passed away. When would a spouse not be entitled? That is normally when someone marries someone after separation and did not purchase an annuity from the fund for that new spouse. Or if someone separated from service before 1 April 2001 and had chosen a so-called deferred retirement benefit with a partial lump sum. These are very rare and specific cases, but this is the case where if that deferred retirement benefit with partial lump sum was elected and paid, there is no surviving spouse's benefit payable. How long will it take for a survivor to receive the payment or start receiving payments? That depends on how soon we receive the documents we need. If we receive all required documents and they are in good order and no discrepancies are noted during processing, we would implement a survivor's benefit within 15 to 20 business days following receipt of the required documentation. And again, we would pay as of the first day of the month following the death of the retiree. How much a spouse will receive? It will be 50% of the full entitlement of the late retiree, regardless of whether the retiree took a lump sum or not. So in any case, it will be 50% of the full entitlement prior to lump sum commutation, regardless of whether a lump sum was paid to the retiree or not. It's payable for life, the survivor's benefit, and adjusted for cost of living over time. And a certificate of entitlement must be submitted by the surviving spouse, just like the retiree did before, to continue receiving this entitlement. So here just some advice on what can be done to facilitate the establishment of a surviving spouse's benefit. I mentioned it already, so I will not go through this again, but make sure you have prepared a file for your potentially surviving spouse so that they know where to turn and maybe, also what documents are key to then allow the fund to determine eligibility and, once confirmed, to inform that surviving spouse of what is required to implement their payments. We often get questions from those who have disabled children. What can they do to prepare? How does that all work? So I included here some slides for the process specifically applicable to disabled children following the death of a parent that was a retiree of the fund. I'm not going to go through all the details because these are very specific questions, but I want you to know that this information is included in this presentation, which you can access on our website in a couple of days, and you could refer to this. But generally speaking, in general, following a retiree's death, if the other parent of that disabled child is still alive, they will become the natural guardian of that child. In that case, the child's benefit for a disabled child would be paid to that other surviving parent. But if both parents are deceased, or in some cases where a child does not reside with the other parent that is a survivor, then we would require a legal guardianship to be arranged for this surviving child. And that legal guardianship appointment has to be via a court, an appropriate judicial authority in the child's country of residence. And once we have received the required documentation and information, we would pay that benefit, survivor's benefit for the child, into a specific guardianship account. So that's like general information. Of course, there are sometimes cases where a disabled child can actually handle their own financial affairs. We would require proof from a treating physician if that was the case. And then it is possible for the fund to pay the surviving child's benefit directly to the disabled child from age 16 onward, if that is the case, of course. There's information on our website about disability and disability benefit, but please contact us if you have any questions about this topic. So I will move forward, but make sure you take good note of this information if it helps you to prepare, and maybe also some ease of mind, knowing that you have prepared as much as you can during your lifetime. One important point, if you have a child that is not yet approved for disabled child's benefit by the fund, then normally we are not paying a disabled child's benefit, and normal child's benefits will stop at age 21. So a child that is not disabled will stop receiving a benefit from the fund at the end of the month during which they turn 21. If, however, a child is disabled, you should declare this to the fund normally at the time of separation, but if you haven't done that and it's still close to separation, meaning you just separated, please contact the fund ASAP so that we can have our legal office determine whether the child can still be submitted for approval of a child's disability case by the Staff Pension Committee. Again, please contact us as soon as possible if you have any questions about a child's benefit for a disabled child. There's a booklet about legal guardianship linked here in case it could be helpful. In terms of payment instructions, this is the payment instruction form for survivors, whether this is a surviving spouse or a surviving child or a surviving, secondary dependent. Anyone would have to complete this form, and it would have to be completed by the entitled survivor. On the first page, they have to check the applicable box to who they are submitting this payment instruction form for. And then on the following page, they have to provide their name, banking instructions, contact details, emergency contact details, including email and phone, a date, and their signature, handwritten signature. The signature of the survivor must be authenticated by an authorized official in the gray box at the bottom here, and the authentication date must be the same as the signature date of the survivor. If it's a different date, we will not accept this form. Here's some information on who we accept as an authenticating official, etc. So that was the information on survivors, excuse me, and pertaining to death-related matters. Again, I apologize. If you have any questions about that topic of survivors benefits, or of course your survivors in the future have, as long as they have our contact details or you, please contact us with your questions so we can help clarify anything that you may need that you can't find on our website or that you didn't find clear enough in this presentation. I'm now moving on to the annual proof of life requirement, which is in the form of the certificate of entitlement, the CE, and can be provided either as the CE form or as the digital certificate of entitlement inside the DCE mobile app. So we're going to have a look at what is this requirement, how to fulfill it, and what are the means or the ways in which you can provide your proof of life to the fund so that it is accepted by us. First, any recipient of a monthly payment from the fund who receives direct payments from the fund must submit their proof of life to the fund every year, and we must receive it at the latest by 31 December of the given year. If we don't receive the proof of life for a given year, the fund may have to suspend the benefit of that person. And we would only reinstate a benefit once we have received an acceptable proof of life from the person concerned. So in other words, it is important to know that you have to provide your proof of life every year, and you have to do so at the latest by 31 December. And if you don't provide proof of life in a manner that we accept, we may have to suspend the payment of your benefit and can only reinstate it once you have provided proof of life. If we reinstate a suspended benefit, of course, we pay retroactively the amount that we owe you for the months or few months during which it was suspended. How can you provide your proof of life to the fund? It's in the form of a so-called certificate of entitlement, or CE, and you can provide the CE in basically two manners, either by completing the paper-based barcoded annual CE form, which you can either mail to us in postal mail or special courier, or you could submit to us via electronic submission in your member self-service. Or if you don't want to use the paper-based option, you can download a so-called digital certificate of entitlement app onto your mobile device, and you can then issue your annual CE inside the mobile app. I will talk about that in a bit more detail a little bit later. So you have basically two options, either the CE form option, which you can submit in different manners, or the digital CE option, which is a biometric solution where you would basically download an app onto your mobile device, your phone or your, I don't know, tablet, and then set up a biometric image against which every year we compare a new photo taken of you to make sure that it is, of course, you who takes the picture, and that would satisfy our requirement. If you use one of the options to submit your proof of life, you don't need to use the other. In other words, if you use the CE form, you don't need to also submit your CE inside the DCE app. Or if you use the DCE app, you don't need to also send the CE form. One or the other is sufficient. There is a video about the certificate of entitlement that explains all this in just a few minutes, in case you wanted to watch it. Here on this page, there's a lot of information. I will highlight what is most important. So don't worry, you don't have to read all this right now, but if you want to refer back to that in the future, then of course you have the information here. So again, the certificate of entitlement requirement is every year. You have to submit your proof of life every year. That is a must. You have to submit it, as I said already, anytime between 1 January and 31 December of the given year. You can use either the barcoded CE form, which you either receive by mail, or you can access inside your member self-service under the document tab if you're not on the 2-track. And that form you can either return once you have dated and signed it by hand. You can either return it via mail, or you can upload it and submit it electronically to the fund as a copy, a digital copy, a scanned copy, by using your MSS document upload. Or you can comply by using the DCE app, the Digital Certificate of Entitlement app, where you can issue every year your biometric certificate of entitlement. Again, at the latest by 31 December of the year. If we don't receive your CE, we will have to suspend your benefit. Before we do that, we go through a whole process of trying to find you and obtain your CE form or your DCE. But if we can't, then we will have to suspend the payment of your benefit. We don't like doing that because we know it causes hardship for you and possibly family members. And of course, we want to prevent that wherever possible. In terms of using the form-based certificate of entitlement versus the DCE mobile app, it's entirely up to you. You can choose the manner that you prefer. You are not obliged to use the DCE mobile app. You are not obliged to use the form. You can choose the format or the mode that is most convenient for you. If you use the form, we don't need you to also use the app. If you use the DCE app, we don't need you to also submit the form. If you want to submit both, that is possible, no problem. But we want you to know that it's not required. So one or the other must be submitted within the time frame allowed, but it's sufficient to submit either the form-based CE or the DCE. The DCE app opens for submission of your biometric CE as of 1st of January every year. So as soon as the 1st of the January, you can go into your app, take a picture, and complete the proof of life requirement by issuing your digital CE inside the app. The form-based CE, the one that is mailed out and posted in member self-service, that is generated only at the very end or very beginning of end of June, beginning of July every year. And only those who haven't yet used the digital CE app at the time that the CE form is generated will receive a form. So I told you earlier that this year we had already over 40,000 members or beneficiaries in the fund who used the DCE app to provide their proof of life. So whoever issued their DCE in the app before the 21st of June will not receive a paper mailed CE and will not see their CE form inside their member self-service. Why? Because we don't need it. We already have your digital CE. However, if by the 21st of June we did not receive or you did not yet issue your digital CE inside the DCE app, we assume you may not want to use the app, but you want to receive the mailed form. So we mail it to all those who haven't yet used the app by that date of 21 June. So anyone who didn't use the app by 21 June this year will receive a mailed CE form and can complete the CE exercise by returning that form to the fund. If you wish, you can still use the DCE app. So even if you receive the form, you can say, no, I prefer to use the app. Good. Then please issue the proof of life inside the app by taking the biometric image. And with that, you're good. You don't need then to return the CE form. So you basically have an option. But don't be worried if you didn't receive the form, because especially if you know that you generated your CE inside the DCE app, it just means that you did it early enough that we didn't need to send you a form. What does the CE form look like? It looks like this on the right-hand side. It includes a barcode that is specific to your case, the date it was mailed, your unique ID number, name, and the retirement benefit number, as well as the kind of benefit you receive. If you are on the 2-track, you also will see the country of residence that you declared as your 2-track country. You need to sign in the box and date in that box where it's highlighted and return that form to the fund. Only if your signature has significantly changed from the last time that you submitted a signature that we accepted, would you need to have your signature authenticated. If that is the case, there is information on our website how to have your signature authenticated. But basically, it needs to be done by either a UN official, a notary public, or a government official. Then you return this form to us, either mailing it or by uploading it back to us inside your member self-service. Anyone can upload their duly completed CE form back to the fund and submit it electronically via member self-service, including anyone on the 2-track. You have the choice to return the form to the address pre-printed on the form. If you want to mail it back, that would be an address in New York. But if you prefer to send it to Geneva, to the pension fund in Geneva, then please go onto our website, the Contact Us page, to obtain the address for Geneva and put this CE form into an envelope and address it to Geneva, if that is what you prefer. Otherwise, the standard return address is the one pre-printed on the form in New York. You can return your form in the manner that I already mentioned, so I will not go over that again, but basically by mail, by submission via member self-service, or in person if you wanted to drop the form off in New York or Geneva, Bangkok, or Nairobi offices. If you need to affix a thumbprint on the form, maybe because due to illness, you broke your arm or something, you cannot sign, and you need to affix a thumbprint. For thumbprint signatures, we still need the date of the thumbprint, and in that case, we require a medical certificate from your treating physician on letterhead of the physician, dated and signed by the physician. And we also need that physician to authenticate your signature, the thumbprint signature, on the form in the gray box here at the bottom. And only if we receive the duly authenticated signature and form and the attached medical certificate from your treating physician explaining why you use the thumbprint, can we accept that form. Otherwise, we have no means of recognizing a thumbprint as being the correct one for the given person. For details, again, on our website, we have a lot of details about signature authentication. If you did not receive your certificate of entitlement and you cannot access it inside Member Self-Service under the Document tab, and you cannot use the DCE app, then you may send a letter to the fund where you provide your current mailing address, an explanation that, statement that you're alive, and explanation that you didn't receive your CE and you can't use the DCE app. And you put a subject on top saying non-receipt of 2025 CE form. In that case, we will use this letter with your original signature and the date on it in lieu of CE, and we may have to follow up to see whether we need also a CE form. But we will not suspend your benefit if we have a duly completed letter dated and signed on file. So this is an option only if you did not receive the CE form, you cannot access it in Member Self-Service, and you cannot use the DCE app. Before we suspend, we go through an extensive review of all cases that are where we didn't receive a proof of life document in the time allowed, and we try to find the people and obtain their proof of life so that we don't have to suspend them. For the 2024 CE exercise, we did this pre-suspension exercise in 2025 for 3 months approximately. We started off with nearly 3,000 people slated for suspension because of non-receipt of their proof of life. And in the end, we're able to reduce that number by 70% because we were able, through intensive follow-ups, to find people and obtain their proof of life. So in the end, we had to suspend 800 people for whom we didn't receive the adequate proof of life. 800 is still a lot, but out of over 71,000 people, it is the result of a quite extensive effort to figure out how we can prevent a benefit suspension. But where we can't identify or are certain that someone is alive, we have an obligation to suspend to protect, of course, the financial security of the fund. Now, if your benefit was suspended, or you know of someone whose benefit was suspended, that would have happened at the end of June with the June benefit, if it was due to non-receipt of CE by the fund. In that case, the person concerned should contact us as soon as possible via the Contact Us page or the Payment Stopped mailbox, and ideally provide us with their proof of life as soon as possible. If they can use the digital CE app to provide their proof of life, that is the fastest way of getting them reinstated. It still has to go through a process, but it's kind of accelerating the process because it goes immediately from issuing the CE in the app to pushing the case for reinstatement with our payments team. If they cannot use the app, then they have to submit proof of life in the form that we accept, in the channels that we accept, so that we can reinstate them. And that can be a bit longer than going via the DCE app. Also important to note that if we suspend it, it could be that your after-service health insurance also was suspended because ASHI deductions could not be deducted once your benefits are suspended. So it's always important that if you were suspended, to also contact your ASHI provider for more information on how to ensure reinstatement of your ASHI coverage, or to check whether it was actually suspended too. ASHI is separate from the fund, so we wouldn't know that. In case your benefit was suspended, please refer to these resources that will help guide you on how to get reinstatement as fast as possible. Finally, here just a view of where anyone can check whether the fund received their CE form, or in the future, or possibly also whether their Oh, no, sorry, this page, I'm so sorry. This page is first to access your member self-service CE. So if you're not on the two track, under the view existing documents, you could see the member self-service CE. So if you were suspended, go here, download the CE and submit it to the fund if you can't use the app, so that we can then proceed to reinstatement. And then here is a page where you could track whether the fund received your CE or DCE over time. So that's under the Approved Document tab inside Member Self-Service. For the digital certificate of entitlement, again, that's an option to complete your proof of life requirement. If you have any issue using the DCE app, please contact the DCE support team at the email address provided here, or by calling the fund's contact center or contacting us via the official channels. There's a video explaining the DCE, how it works, how to register for it, and so on. And here are some pages explaining how it works. I think I already mentioned all the key elements for the DCE. What you need to know is that before you can use the DCE app, you need to download it and you need to register for using it. Once you have set up key elements of the DCE app that include your name, an email address, a phone number, and uploading an ID document, you will be contacted by the fund for a video call to verify your identity. And once that has taken place, they will authorize you to use the app going forward. Once you're authorized, you can then every year issue your proof of life in the form of this biometric digital certificate of entitlement inside the app. It would consist of you taking a photo of yourself that would match against an existing biometric image to confirm that you are indeed the person taking the picture. The one thing to remember is the DCE app can be used by anyone, regardless of whether you are on the two track or not. If you are on the two track, make sure you are in your country of residence, the one you declared to the fund, when you issue your DCE inside the app. Why? Because the app tracks the details of your location while you generate your digital CE. And if you're outside of your country of residence while doing that, it indicates to us that you're not actually in your declared location or in your declared country. And in that case, we have to start a process of following up with you to confirm whether you have moved to a different country, which then requires you submitting new documents, proof of residence, and us recalculating your benefit on the two track for a new country. Or if you confirm that you were just temporarily in a given country on vacation, we have to then determine that together. But to prevent this whole process of having to take place of verification of your location, or rather of you still being a resident of your declared country of residence, if you are on the two track, again, please make sure you are in that country that you declare to the fund when you generate your digital CE. Anyone else who is not on the two track can issue their DCE anywhere in the world whenever they wish within the period of 1 January to 31 December. I will not go into the details of how to generate the DCE. I would just say there are a lot of resources on our website in English, French, and Spanish on the DCE to help you set it up and use it over time. As I said, we now have far over 50% of our members using it, over 70%, I think, using the DCE as the way to provide their proof of life to the fund. Now I will cover change of address or bank details, just to highlight how you can make that change or these changes with the fund. It is very important that the fund always has your up-to-date address and banking details on file, so that we make sure we can contact you and we make sure we send the money to the correct bank account. You can update your mailing address inside your member self-service portal if you are not on the two track and you don't have a pouch address. If you cannot use member self-service to update your address, you can submit a form called PF23M, which is available on our website or inside your member self-service. To change your bank account and currency information and/or, you would have to submit form PF23, a separate form or different form, which must be submitted either electronically inside your member self-service or by mail to the fund. So what is important to retain here is that you have the option for address update in member self-service if you are not on the 2-track and you don't have a pouch address. But anyone could always use a certain form to make these updates. Just please make sure to let us know if you change your address. And for your banking instructions, it always has to be done via a form, PF23, which you would have to submit to the fund. And you can either submit via member self-service, or outside of member self-service, you can send us the original form with your handwritten signature to our pension fund offices. Here are the two forms, either for change of address on the left or on the right for change of payment instructions, including for account information, currency information, and address. Keep in mind that if you're changing your bank account, even if it's in the same country, you still have to submit a change of payment instructions form. And if your bank informs you that you changed or there are changed codes for your sort code or SWIFT code, then also please inform the fund through the same method, the form, so that we make sure you get your payments. Documents must be received via the official channels allowed, either scanned copies of hand-signed documents via member self-service or originals with handwritten signature. We do not accept other means of receiving these documents, and we don't accept faxes. Only for changes in intermediary bank for cross-border payments would it be sufficient to send that change in an email, and we would make the change based on an email, but that is an exception. How long does it take the fund to make these changes? Generally 15 business days from the date of receipt of the required form. So make sure that if you have a change in bank account, that you don't close an old account until your new account has received the first payment. If that is not possible and you had to close an account because of fraud or something, then please understand that there could be a return payment that we first have to reissue and then change and reissue, of course, to your new account, but we need to first receive the required form to be able to reissue and pay to a new account. Now, cost of living adjustment. I will not spend much time on that because I prefer that we have about 20 minutes for questions. So I just want to highlight very quickly that benefits are adjusted for cost of living over time based on the pension adjustment system of the fund. Usually this happens every year, the 1st of April, if an adjustment is applied. If you're interested in the details, please read through these slides or our COLA webpage on our website. But generally, you should know that we only adjust benefits provided that the relevant consumer price index has moved by at least 2% since the date of the last adjustment. If that's the case, we will make the adjustment. If, however, an adjustment or the movement is of less than 2%, then that CPI movement will be carried over and applied with the next following adjustment when that should be made. Usually adjustments are made in April every year. However, if there's a very high inflation situation where a CPI, a consumer price index, has moved by 10% or more since the date of the last adjustment, then we would do an additional adjustment in October. But this is very exceptional. I personally don't know if that has happened very often. I think I saw it once. I already mentioned at the very beginning of the presentation that the adjustment done this year for the US dollar track was of 2.8% and applied to all benefits on the US dollar track. And of course, adjustments are made on the local track as applicable for the given countries. Maybe just to highlight that those who are on the 2 track, just like those on the dollar track, everyone should receive a cost of living adjustment letter, which was generated by the fund and issued by the end of April 25. So you should have received those letters and they are posted inside your member self-service under the View Documents tab. Finally, a word on the UN Pension Fund Emergency Fund. The fund, the UN Pension Fund, can, under very specific circumstances, determine to make what we call emergency fund payments to address situations of severe financial hardship, provided the eligibility conditions for such payment have been met. Emergency fund payments are one-time payments to address a punctual financial hardship situation. They are not intended to increase regular pension payments, and they can only be made for certain specific situations. The rules of the emergency fund are provided in a booklet, emergency fund booklet that we have, the so-called Note A under the fund's regulations and rules. So it's important to understand that in order to receive an emergency fund financial assistance, one has to be a retiree or beneficiary of the fund in receipt of regular payments, and it has to be for something that is in line with the emergency fund conditions. It could be to support medical expenses that are not covered by another source, or it could be to help with funeral expenses, or it could be, in certain cases, to address situations of destruction of a home after a natural disaster. So there are certain situations where we are allowed to make these payments, but we have to determine eligibility before we can make these payments. Before submitting a request, it is very useful to read the emergency fund booklet to determine whether it's worth submitting an emergency fund request. If so, that request can be submitted via the emergency fund tab inside member self-service, or of course, it can be submitted via the official contact channels, meaning the Contact Us form in writing, or by sending a letter to the fund or an email. Once we receive a request, we will determine whether a person is eligible and whether the situation for which they request emergency fund help is indeed covered under the emergency fund rules. We would make a one-time payment. It would be an amount that is usually not the full amount of what is requested, but a percentage of that, depending on certain criteria that we have to apply. So more details are in the booklet about the emergency fund. Hence, I will not go into more detail here, but on our website, we have a page dedicated to the emergency fund where we have the booklet that would help explain. And I think there's also a video about the emergency fund. Finally, if you needed to contact us, I already showed you the official contact channels on our website. So basically, please go to our Contact Us webpage and here select what is best for you. Writing to us, calling us, visiting us, or if you need to send us mail, then how to submit documents will give you the mailing addresses for our different offices. And finally, we have the urgent assistance that I mentioned earlier that you can access under the Contact Us page. And with that, I will stop and hand over to Dilba for questions.
Thank you, Christine, for this very informative session. We have not received many questions, so I kept the Q&A open in case somebody still wants to submit a question. But I'll read some of them. So first question. My grandmother, who has been a beneficiary survivor, but claims has not been submitting any CEs for a few years and still is receiving her pension. Will this be an issue once I help her in submitting a CE this year? Any special requirements for this particular scenario?
That's an interesting question, and thank you very much to the person submitting it and also for attending. This is actually great that people make use of these town halls, not just for themselves, but to support family members or understand certain aspects that might be useful in the future. So thank you very much for that question. Will it be a problem in the future if you help your grandmother submit the certificate of entitlement? Not really, because I think you are just going to help prevent that it will become an issue. So generally speaking, we have a system where in the past, we would have kind of like a rotational system where depending on what someone's profile is, whether it's a survivor or it's a regular retiree, we had certain audit requirements to verify signatures on the CE within certain intervals. So we didn't have to verify everyone's signature every year, but we had a certain pool of people for whom we had to verify the signature. So it can happen that a person falls between the cracks indeed, which seems to have been the case for your grandmother. But eventually we would catch up. And since I think this exercise, we have in place a so-called automated signature verification system that is new, which means that now we verify all signatures for all CEs that have been sent out and are returned. Of course, if your grandmother didn't get a CE, there might be a different issue. But what I would suggest is that if you didn't get, or your grandmother didn't get a CE this year, please reach out to us, send us an email via the contact form on behalf of your grandmother or with your grandmother to explain the situation and ask us how to best address the situation. If your grandmother has access to member self-service, you could submit a letter from your grandmother, as I explained earlier, where she provides her current mailing address, a statement as to that she's alive and the reason for not submitting proof of life in the past, not getting the CE, and also making sure that she provides on it her signature and the date, and it's a handwritten signature. You could provide that letter via member self-service. But if your grandmother doesn't have access to member self-service, then she or you could contact us via the contact us form and we can re-establish contact and make sure that we receive a document in the manner that is the most adequate for your grandmother. If you can help her to download the digital certificate of entitlement app, that might be the easiest solution because you could simply download it, help her go through the verification process with a video call if she uses a mobile phone that is a smartphone, and then have her take the biometric image and complete the digital CE for 2025 inside the app. If that is a solution that works for you, your grandmother, it would address the whole situation because once she has provided her digital CE, all is back in good order. So you have different options, but if the DCE option doesn't work, please contact us and we help you re-establish your grandmother on the regular track so that she receives the CE form if she doesn't want to see the DCE app, etc. I hope that helped. It's a lot of information. I would also say please use the online resources on the certificate of entitlement and the digital certificate of entitlement web pages on our website to help you assess what is the best solution for your grandmother. Back to you, Dilba.
Thank you, Christine. There is a question on the fluctuations of monthly pension. Why would somebody see significant fluctuation? Are there specific factors that contribute to these changes? And are there any mechanism to place to limit such fluctuations?
Thank you. So I'm going to bring up back the website. I think you can see it. Let's go to the home page and start from home. My mouse seems overheated. Okay, so if you, the home page is loading. Let me close some pages. I think there's too much going on. All right. So if you're on the home page and you go to for clients, let's go to retired or receiving benefits. You see here the fluctuation of monthly payment, fluctuation of monthly benefit, sorry. And here you have actually the Q&A to answer that question, which is the same as what I will respond to you. What are reasons for benefit fluctuation? So these are the ones that we are most familiar with. The monthly after-service health insurance premium. So what we see is that over time, these premiums seem to fluctuate. So 1 month they're a little bit higher, another month a little bit lower. That is entirely outside of the control of the fund, but you can track inside your member self-service under the disbursement tab. There you would see from 1 month to the next whether the amount that was deducted for after-service health insurance, if the case, is the same or changed from 1 month to the next. And maybe that would explain a fluctuation in the amount that you received into your account. So this is, of course, only for those, as a first check, who actually have ASHI premiums deducted from their pension. But I would say that's always a good first step. Go to your disbursement tab in member self-service, check, was there a fluctuation? And as you know, sometimes there is a, there could be a quite significant increase of the premium, which means that your benefit is like that much reduced from 1 month to the next. That's one. Then another reason are bank charges. So depending on how you receive your payments, it might be that in your case, bank charges are applied to receive the benefit. And these bank charges are outside of the fund's control. So they can impact, indeed, the amount that you receive. So bank charges are, I would say, fairly regular reason for fluctuation in the amount that someone receives. As it mentioned here, sometimes it helps to negotiate with a bank for bank charges. Some banks seem to be open to that, but that is a personal kind of approach that you would have to take with your bank to see if you can impact bank charges if they seem to be significantly higher than what you think is fair. It is definitely a worldwide practice, and again, the fund would not absorb the bank charges. Another reason indeed is the discontinuation of a child's benefit. So anyone who is entitled after separation to a retirement or early retirement benefit might be, or a disability benefit, might be entitled to a child's benefit payment together with their own benefit. Or even a survivor could receive a child's benefit together with their own benefit. Now, normally a child's benefit payment stops once a child reaches age 21. So that happens, this stop happens at the end of the month during which a child reaches age 21. So we will stop making these payments. And that is not always clear to everyone. And indeed, if someone receives a child's benefit and we stop, that would be a significant amount less that is paid to that person, several $100s per month. So that's another reason. And then cost of living adjustment. So monthly pension amounts can change because of cost of living adjustment. Usually that's an upward adjustment in the case of the annual adjustment for the US dollar track. And then, of course, for those who are on the 2-track, those fluctuations could be on a quarterly basis. There it's not to do necessarily with cost of living adjustment, but with the 2-track system and the fact that depending on which of the two values we are paying out of the US dollar value and the local track value, you will receive the better one for your case, and it could be a different one from 1 month to the next, but there can definitely be fluctuation. And then another reason here, the exchange rate fluctuation for currency conversion, which is probably one that is more acute right now, where because we calculate benefits in US dollar, if you receive your payment not directly in the currency of payment, you may see a fluctuation. And even if you receive your value in euro right now, given that the quarterly exchange rate will apply, you may still see a fluctuation over the quarter from one quarter to the next. Or from 1 month to the next, but it's probably more evened out. So in any case, here you have more detailed explanation for the main reasons that we know, explaining why there are benefit fluctuations. And again, this is on the webpage, either under retired or receiving benefits, or if one goes to all topics here under for clients, you'd find more pages, including the one about fluctuation. That's it. Thank you. Back to you, Dilba.
Thank you, Christine. There is a question on survivor's benefit. What if somebody is in the process of retiring? However, if they pass away before their benefit can be implemented, can their spouse receive their survivor's benefits? And in the same token, what if they don't wish their divorced surviving spouse to receive the surviving spouse benefit? Can they assign this to someone else, like to their children? Thank you.
Okay, so I take this as two questions. First, the question of a survivor's benefit. So if you are in the process of separating, I presume have already separated, but still awaiting the implementation of your benefit. And the question, if I understood it correctly, is if I pass away before my benefit can be implemented, then what happens to the part that was owed to me as a retiree between the date I separated and my date of death? And then also, is there a survivor's benefit payable to my spouse? So for the surviving spouse's benefit, if you were married to your spouse at the time of separation or prior, and remained married until your date of death to the same spouse, then the answer is yes. Your spouse would be entitled to a lifelong surviving spouse's benefit, and that person would receive 50% of whatever your full entitlement is prior to potentially taking out a lump sum. The amount that is owed to you, the person who separated and is entitled to a normal or early retirement benefit as of the date following the separation date, but because it takes some time to implement a benefit, may pass away before receiving these payments, there might be a retroactive amount due that is not a surviving spouse's benefit, but the actual retirement benefit that we never were able to pay to the person who should have received it. So this amount would be considered an amount that is now payable to the estate. And normally, we would pay that amount to an executor of the estate in line with whatever the applicable law is or that applies under this executor of the estate, under the law where the person passed away. So it's payable as part of the estate, if you will, because it's not a surviving spouse's benefit as such. That's for the amount payable. So that amount would still be payable in full for the period from separation till death of the retiree who was never able to receive that payment. Then we take over to pay the surviving spouse's benefit, as I said, from the first day of the month following the date of death of the retiree. Now to the surviving ex-spouse. So if someone has a divorced spouse, it depends on whether that ex-spouse fulfills a number of conditions, whether they will receive and be entitled to a divorced surviving spouse's benefit. I would say as a first stop, it's good to understand that the base condition for an ex-spouse to be potentially entitled to a surviving ex-spouse's benefit is they must have been married for at least 10 years to our participant. So our person who was an active participant in the fund must have been married for at least 10 years to the now ex-spouse while paying contributions to the fund. If that condition is not fulfilled, there is no entitlement for the ex-spouse. If, however, that condition is fulfilled, we will then check a number of other conditions to determine whether the ex-spouse is entitled or not. The next step we would do is look at a divorce decree to see whether that divorce document clearly excludes the ex-spouse from entitlement to UNJSPF survivors' benefits. If that clause is included in the divorce document, in the court order, then we will honor that and not pay a divorced surviving spouse's benefit because we consider a court deemed it fair and just that this ex-spouse should not receive anything. Probably there were arrangements made that justify that. But in any case, if there's a court order where it's clearly and explicitly stated that the ex-spouse is not entitled to UNJSPF entitlements as a survivor, we will not make any payments. But if there isn't such decree or such court document that clearly excludes an ex-spouse from UNJSPF survivors entitlements, we will go on and check more conditions. And these conditions are all under Article 35 bis of the fund's regulations and rules. The next condition is that we will check whether or how much time has elapsed between the date of divorce and the date of death of our late retiree. If more than 15 years have gone by, there is no entitlement unless the ex-spouse was entitled to alimony payments or maintenance payments at the time of our retiree's death. But if there was no obligation to pay maintenance on our retiree, then there is no entitlement. And finally, if a divorced spouse completes condition 10 years marriage during participation, no divorce decree excluding her, less than 15 years have elapsed between date of divorce and date of death, then we would pay a divorced surviving spouse as of their 40th birthday at the earliest. If they are younger, they would have to wait to reach age 40. So I stop there, but I think you see that there are many conditions that need to be checked and fulfilled to determine whether someone is entitled. What I would say is two things. One, if there is a divorce and it is fair that an ex-spouse should be excluded from pension fund payments, then a court order should state that clearly. So this is something to keep in mind. Second, it is helpful to put a divorce document on file, regardless of what it contains, because if there is a new spouse, their entitlement is dependent on us being able to determine the entitlement of the ex-spouse. If we cannot make a clear determination, both benefits are on hold to determine whether they should be paid or not. So it is very important to understand that by not submitting adequate documentation to the fund, you may also penalize your actual surviving spouse. And third, if an ex-spouse is entitled as per our regulations and all conditions were fulfilled, we will pay. So assigning rights to someone else is not an option. We go by the regulations and rules and will follow strictly the regulations and rules. If someone is entitled, we shall pay. If someone is not entitled, we will not pay. But we are not honoring assignments to other entities or parties because we're not allowed to do that. So I hope that clarifies. There is a whole page here, if you see, on divorce, which might be a useful page to visit to understand the conditions and what to do in case of divorce. And then under the survivors page, there is information for all the different kinds of survivors and what are the eligibility conditions are for each, including for the divorced surviving spouse. So I hope that might be useful too. Long response, sorry. Back to you, Dilba.
Thank you, Christine. There's a question on death certificate. Does a death certificate have to be in the UN language? And if so, does it have to be certified by someone official?
Thank you for that question. Ideally, it would be great if it were, but we fully understand that that is not always possible. So if the death certificate is not in one of the official UN languages, then if a translation can be provided from a UN office, we would accept that. So in that case, the person wouldn't have to ask for an official translation, which we know can be costly. But if there is no UN office, it would be helpful to get an official translation, and it will accelerate the process. Generally, I would say in the fund, if we get a document in a language that is not one of the official languages, we always try to find internally in the fund a staff member that may speak that language. And if we have that, we will do the translation internally and not require an official translation. But there are many languages that are not spoken inside the pension fund. And that means we would have to go back to the survivor and say, sorry, we need to get first a translation, which then will take the time to obtain it. So I think the best course of action is to directly ask that question at the time of when submitting the document, to say, I have a document, but it is in whatever the language is, a language that is not a UN language. Can you accept it in this language, or do I need an official translation or UN office translation? And we will let you know based on who works in the fund and whether we have an in-house capacity to translate. So the answer is ideally yes, but we understand it's not always possible, and we will do what we can to support the survivors without needing the official translation. But when it is needed, we will have to ask for it.
Thank you, Christine. There is a request for clarification on authentication of the PANS form E2. So where this beneficiary is residing, you would get a death certificate usually within 24 hours, but having a signature authenticated by a government official would take a week to get an appointment and 3-day delay to get a certificate. It would be practically impossible to get authentication date on the same day as signature date.
Okay, so thank you for that question, which is very helpful because it allows me to clarify what I tried to explain and clearly didn't convey very well. Let me go to this form. So I'm going to the form on our website, which is the blank generic version of the form. Here, under other forms, we have the PANS E2 form. So what I tried to explain is, let me make it a bit smaller so you can see the form better. What I tried to explain is that when the authenticating official affixes their authentication in this gray box, the date that they are authenticating must match the date that our survivor signed this form. In other words, what is the purpose of authentication? It is to say, I, the authenticating official, am here with the person who completed this form, and I certify that this is indeed, let's say it's me, Christine Kartner, sitting in front of me, and I certify that she provided an ID document based on which I can say it's her. That's all this is, right? But this means that we want to be sure that the authenticating official was in the presence of our beneficiary, survivor, at the time of authenticating. So having a different date as the signature date from our survivor than the date of the authenticating official seems to indicate that the people were not in the same space and place. And that defies the purpose of authentication. Again, we want to be sure that our survivor and the authenticating official are together, and the authenticating official has indeed verified our survivor's identity and signs off on that by filling out that gray box. Hence, the survivor should sign the form in front of the official that is authenticating and only date the form in front of the official that is authenticating. That is proper authentication. And therefore, what you described in the question is fine. I'm sorry, it seems to be a bit of a convoluted process of having to make an appointment and so on. But the importance here is just that once the authentication takes place, that this authenticating official is together with our survivor, and only at that time the survivor signs and dates that form in front and in the presence of the official. I hope that helped clarify. I will just add one thing, that in terms of authentication, under our topics, there's a page dedicated to authentication of signatures and documents. So it might be useful to have a look at that to understand some of the frequently asked questions and the process that we require. But I hope I have clarified that it's about being together at the time of the authentication, because that's the whole purpose. Back to you, Dilba.
Thank you, Christine. There is a question. My mother is 94 and can no longer sign her CE form. We have legal guardianship. What do we do now?
Okay. So now we go here for clients, retired receiving benefits, legal guardianship. I'm just using this as an opportunity to show you all the information that's actually available on the website. So there's a whole page on this. There's also a video, there's also a booklet. So you say you have legal guardianship. So first of all, just to clarify that the fund only accepts court assigned legal guardians, or court appointed, I should say, sorry, legal guardians. We do not accept power of attorney. So just to be clear that when we talk about legal guardianship, it's a judicial authority equipped to provide legal guardianship or make legal guardianship decisions that has to actually, assign the legal guardianship. So power of attorney, even enduring power of attorney, is not recognized by the fund because it's not considered secure enough. Now, if you have legal guardianship, if you haven't done so yet, you have to inform the fund that you are now legal guardians of your mother. Mother, right? Not grandmother. Mother. Okay. And how do you do that? You send to the fund the court document in which you were assigned as a legal guardian of your mother, or guardians. And usually this implies that a legal guardianship account has to be set up into which now the benefit will be paid in the future. Unless the guardianship clearly states that your mother can still take care of the financial affairs or maintain their own bank account, in which case we can continue to pay the benefit into that bank account of your mother, but we know that she will no longer sign the official documents like the CE. I would say, so basically you have to first inform the fund, you have to provide the documents that as evidence that you are now the legal guardian. We will require, together with the legal document, I think a valid passport copy. And is there anything else I may forget? I don't think so, but no. And then the fund will go through the process of having the legal guardianship recognized. So it goes to our legal office. They will go and assess the legal documents and then confirm that legal guardianship is indeed recognized. And once that is done, we have our system updated to know that this is a legal guardianship case. This means, the legal guardianship means that you are authorized to sign the CE form on behalf of your mother. But we can only accept the CE with that signature from you once your legal guardianship was recognized by the fund. So the first step is to get it recognized. The second step is to then provide the CE form. with your signature. In the meantime, if you wanted to already submit the CE form, you could always go the route of having a thumbprint affixed from your mother and submit that and have it also authenticated by a physician together with a medical certificate. So if that goes for anyone, legal guardian or not, if for some reason someone cannot script their signature like they used to, they can affix their thumbprint. But in that case, as I mentioned earlier, we need to have the signature authentication field completed by the treating physician with a stamp of office, signature, date, and I think there's something else, but you'll see it. Every field is indicated. And of course, the thumbprint has to be affixed and the date of the thumbprint. And then we need to also have attached to the CE form the medical document or certificate from that same doctor that authenticated to state that for the reason XYZ, this beneficiary can no longer sign, but provides a thumbprint on the form. And that letter from the doctor must be on letterhead of the doctor and hand signed by the physician. I hope I covered this, but I would say please also check this webpage on legal guardianship to make sure. And of course, if you have any questions, contact us so we can make sure we give you all the necessary information and you are well equipped and clear on what to do so that we will ensure the continued payment of your mother's entitlements going forward now and in the future. I mean, there's no risk of suspension. I hope it's not a suspended case, but there's usually no risk of suspension at this time. We just want to make sure that all is in good order and in place, so there will be no risk in the future.
Thank you, Christine.
Back to you, Dilba.
Thank you. There is a question about payments, whether someone can request their benefit to be paid to more than one bank account.
No, that's a very straightforward answer. It is not possible. So the only time when we accept two separate accounts is at the time of implementation of a benefit, where we accept a lump sum to go into a different account than the monthly payments. But if this is about paying monthly payments and splitting them into two different accounts, that is not possible.
Thank you, Christine. There is also a question about if someone who is in receipt of monthly pension changes their country of residence, what should they do?
All right, so we don't know yet. Yeah, we don't know whether this person is on the two-track or not. So we'll take the two scenarios. If you are paid, if you're not on the two-track, and I will say that if you are on the two-track, you usually know that. If you are not on the two-track or you're not aware you're on the two-track, you're probably not. That means you're on the US dollar track. That means that we don't need to have proof of residence on file for you, but we do need to know for everyone to whom we will pay benefits if they change their address. So if you're not on the two-track, it's a simple informing us that you have a new address. And you can either do that via the member self-service address tab, where you can update your address, or you can use the form PF23M, which you can download in member self-service or here under resources, forms, change of address. So there's a form. It's the one in member self-service is better because it's pre-completed with unique ID number, name, etc. But this is the form. If you can't use member self-service or the member self-service form, this is the form to complete with the new mailing address and also always, if possible, email and phone number, signature, date, and submission to the fund. Again, submission to the fund can be in any manner. In any manner that is explained here on our Contact Us page under Submit Documents, so for you to decide what is the best manner. But that is a change of address for someone who is not paid under the two-track system. However, if this person is paid under the two-track system, that means they have to provide proof of residence to us. So now we would need, if they are changing country of residence, or was it just simple address?
Just address.
Address. Okay, so if this is someone on the two-track, if you are only changing address inside the same country, that is your declared country of residence, same for you, you only need to submit form PF23M. That's it, because you're changing address but remain inside the declared country of residence. However, if you're on the two-track and you're changing address, including a change in country of residence, then we require that you submit the following. We need we need from you Form PENS E11, change of country of residence, because you're on the two-track and you're changing country, you need to submit this form, and you need to submit new proof of residence for the new country where you are now residing. And that needs to happen as soon as possible, because we need to recalculate your entitlement on the local track for the new country of residence. As you know, if you're on the two-track follows you around the world. So from one country to the next, and we will have to adjust the payment to reflect the new country of residence, CPI, etc. So if on the two-track, then if two-track and change in country, we need forms E11 and proof of residence. So you need to get a new proof of residence. If, however, on the two-track but remains in the same country as before, then all we need is form PF23M. And if you are not on the two-track, then PF23M is sufficient. That's it.
Thank you, Christine. So these are all the questions that we received, but there were some suggestions
yes,
that I may read out, that if we could, in future sessions, include more information about taxation and after-service health insurance, it would be much appreciated.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate the suggestion. The answer is, unfortunately, we are not able to do that. Why? Because in the fund, we are not equipped to provide information on taxation or after-service health insurance. We do not administer after-service health insurance. It's separate from the fund. The only thing the fund does is receive the information from after-service health insurance providers of the amount that we should take out of a pension where that is the case. That's it. Nothing else. We have no insight into health insurance. We have no knowledge of eligibility requirements, etc. So we will not be able to talk about after-service health insurance because we would overstep our competence. So that, unfortunately, is not something we can offer in the future. What I can say is, and I know it's not very helpful, but just so you know, under the For Clients tab, All Topics, we have a page on after-service health insurance, where mostly we say we cannot really address this topic. The only things we can address is what is under the FAQs. Besides, this is not for the pension fund. So that's one. Taxation is the other topic. I understand that request, but again, the pension fund is not equipped to provide advice on taxation. We do not have tax experts. We pay benefits in 190 plus countries. Every country has different tax laws, and the fund is truly not expert and equipped to provide taxation advice. So this is something we cannot talk about other than what we have on our very limited webpage for taxation. Here, the one I'm opening right now. So on this page, we have access to a tax guide that was not written by the pension fund, but by the UN legal office and tax offices. And it was created a long time ago, 15 years ago, as part of the, at the time, pre-retirement seminars offered by the UN, and where these offices would provide information on taxation. The tax guide, as far as we were informed, is still valid for most parts. So we are making it available, but with a disclaimer that it is since a version of 2010, and as far as we're aware, has not been updated. And it's really just for the convenience of those that may find it useful. This tax guide includes some information on taxation of UNJSPF benefits in the United States, and the general principles of national and local taxation of UNJSPF benefits. But it is limited in scope, I would say. So I understand that it may not answer all the questions that people have. Then there is information on the general principle of taxation of UNJSPF benefits, and it's only on the United States. That's all we have. And there is this US tax qualification letter of the fund, which again, I know is probably not what this suggestion is about. So the bottom line is that unfortunately, beyond what we have on this page, we do not have competence to advise beyond this. And therefore, we will not include tax advice in this kind of presentation because we would overstep and talk about something that we are not experts on. I know, for having interacted with multiple representatives of AFICs, of associations of former international civil servants, of retiree associations of the UN system, let's say, where oftentimes they are wonderful sources for at least good tax advisors in a given country, because there are groups of retirees who have dealt with similar issues as newer retirees. And they are very, very helpful, and not just for taxation, but they have a wealth of information that could include taxation, and they may be able to guide you better than we could in the fund. So I know it's probably not the answer that you were hoping for, but those two topics specifically are very clearly off limits for the fund. Yeah. Back to you, Dilba. I don't know, you switched off, so I presume there are no further questions.
No, that's all.
Okay.
Thank you, Christine.
But I do appreciate that suggestions were made how to improve this session. This is great, and I really appreciate it. I'm sorry I can't respond in a more favorable manner. Dilba, can you confirm whether the survey was shared? Or Georgina
yes.
maybe can confirm.
Yes, I shared it.
Perfect.
It's on
Thank you very much.
Q&A, yeah.
Great. So with that, big thanks to everyone who helped make this happen. Regina from the comms side, Alessandro from the IT side, and Dilba, who moderated, obviously. Thank you so much for your attendance and for staying on a half hour beyond what we had planned for. But I really appreciate your questions. And I think, in my view, they're extremely helpful in clarifying some of the aspects that I addressed, but probably not necessarily in the manner that was most useful to you. I hope it was helpful. It was useful, at least for some aspects. And most importantly, I hope all of you, or I wish all of you good health, and wish all of us in these rather tumultuous times that you are in a place where you are at peace and, as I said, healthy. We in the fund will do our best to serve you and serve you better as we move to modernize and improve. But we really appreciate your presence today and your feedback in the survey. Also, a heads up that we will conduct a large-scale survey for the pension fund in the near future, in the next, I don't want to give an exact time frame, but I believe in the next couple of months. And we really appreciate anyone who is willing to take that survey. It will be distributed via email to anyone for whom we have an email on file. And your feedback will be very much appreciated. It will help us understand your you know, your needs from the fund and how useful certain of our services may be or not, or how effective. And we intend to more regularly survey our entire population, or maybe specific populations of clients, to make sure that we focus on areas that really need improvement because you deem they are the most important. So in advance, thank you also for participating in that survey when the time comes. That's it from me. So with that, thank you very much, and I wish you all a very good continuation of the day, afternoon, or evening until we meet again. Thank you.